Good day, everybody. Okay, so we're working now from our new textbook, the one we received from the Department of Education. So I'm going to go through the first chapters and we'll go through, you'll see it's actually for term one, but we'll do this because it's a bit different than our textbook. So our first chapter we're starting with now is database management. It's very similar to everything you learned last year, end of grade 11, but let's look at the concepts they've got here. Okay, so the first one, they talk about databases in a nutshell. That's just the purpose of a database, which is to store large amounts of data and store them in a neat and effective manner so that we can extract information from there. Um, Database management systems or database management software is the responsibility for managing these databases. Examples are like Microsoft Access, which we create a database in and then we use that software to manage it. Don't worry about the activities, I'll tell you which ones to do at the end of the lesson. Okay, so the first part, data collection. How can we collect data for our database? First one is using forms with all these components, similar to our Delphi programs. You can use any of those components to gather information easily. We get tags, of which like the RFID tag, that you can actually also retrieve information for different people. When the day you'll see like somebody signing in, you'll know who checked in at what time in which door, so that you can keep track of who went where when, and if information gets lost you can actually track it back. Other examples of RFID tags is like products in a warehouse, tools in a shop, so that you can know which products are located where and easy to find and easy to keep track of. Our e-tolls and RFID, our e-toll road, when you go to Johannesburg and you drive through those things, they pick up, if you're not registered, they pick up your license plate, but otherwise you can actually register for a code and then or a disc, and then you've got a disc in your car, and this will actually pick up by the um, e-toll gate, and then you'll get your bills in the mail and so forth with this RFID chip that you get. Digital sensors are sensors that you can use for like temperature, distance, humidity, light. So it's different sensors that like weather stations and weather balloons and um, geographers or people that work measure the earthquakes and to see when volcano might erupt. All these type of sensors you can also use that will actually gather a lot of information that will be entered into a database so that that can be used to then do all the calculations they need to do. We get another thing they call invisible online data collection. That is when they collect data that you don't actually know about. Or it's sort of like the metadata. You know, metadata of a file is like who created the file, when was it created, when was it last edited, who last did the edits and stuff like that. Now it's similar to this. Information gets actually stored about all of us. Now, this invisible online data collection is not sensitive material. They won't. Database on computers, mobile phones also store their users' personal information, such as their email address, username, and passwords. That gets stored, but that's not part of our invisible data collection. The invisible ones are more other things, like websites you visit and those things. So you'll see if we go on here. Also, a cookie is a message on a web browser that's a text file and that actually keeps information that the cookie identifies the user could customize the web page for each person. So it's more your likes and stuff like that. It will not be your password and sensitive material like your banking details and so forth and so forth. So you can read through all this, but that's our invisible. Part of that is also our transaction tracking. So you'll see with each transaction, it's not just your bank account, but it's actually information about you and maybe payment information. Just what do you use? Do you use a card? Do you use cash? Loyalty cards, that's why companies actually want you to use loyalty cards, even like Checkers that introduced that card now that let's say you get discount on, but the main reason for them actually introducing that card is to sort of keep track of who buys what where so that they can have better demographic information about the people that they are servicing in each area. We also get location based data. So that is just even when you take a picture, it is part of the metadata of that picture is where it's taken, when it's taken, and stuff like that. So they can use this information for a variety of reasons. Okay, location based services. Okay. Okay, data warehousing. So what is a data warehouse? So data warehouse is similar to just a large database, but the main thing, unlike most databases, the data that where the data is normalized. So in a normal database, we want it as efficient as possible. Now the main thing with a data warehouse, it just takes the data from lots of databases and put it in a non-normalized way. So it's not meant to be very efficient. It's just meant to have a lot of information. So there will be a lot of redundancies, but it's there to store a lot of data. So both have got their purposes. However, they were built to serve different purposes. So a data warehouse is for large quantity of historical data. So this is not for daily use. It's more for when we want to go see what happened in the past. While a database stores current transactions. So what do we day to day and like who owes what so that we can follow up with those things. While this one is more to just find out what type of people maybe normally would owe us a lot of money or do not pay the debts and so forth and so forth. Okay, then we get data mining. So the purpose of data mining is to identify trends and patterns in large databases. So that's a lot of time with our database warehousing. It's used on there, and it's also called big data. So it's just when a lot of data is stored. And we can actually use data mining to show us some trends and patterns in the data sets so that we can try to find out like customer ages, gender, tastes, when do they do what, when do they buy what, to gather information like that from our data that was stored. Okay, there's tasks. Okay, data mining process. So you'll extract relevant data, then you look for patterns, and then you discover knowledge from there. So to extract relevant data, so with this, they use SQL queries so that you can extract specific fields, which data tables to use, which conditions, so that you can look for something. Then looking for the patterns, and then we discover knowledge from there. Okay, then our value of data and metadata. So for a database to be useful, it needs to record and store valuable and useful data. To decide if the data is valuable to record, you ask yourself the following questions. So you ask yourself those questions to see, do you actually need to store this information? Do I need for that? So if you're not going to use it again in the future, then why do you want to store it? So you ask yourself these questions to find out, do you actually want to save the information or not? And then based on that, you'll actually decide what information to store, and then how do you want to protect your information. So with this protection, there's a lot of options there. First two is very importantly data validation, data verification. You need to know the difference. Data validation refers to the process which took you to check whether the data is accurate in the correct format or in the correct type before allowing the database to record it. So data validation can be done by a computer, that you can validate if an ID is 13 digits and so forth and so forth. While data verification is a manual technique that can be used to make sure that the data in the database is correct and accurate. So there's two ways. First one is full verification that requires each piece of data entered in the database is read and checked by someone. So the main thing is it's a person that needs to do this. Or just sample verification where you just take every now and again one and just to check if that is correct or not. Data integrity has to do with that the information is trustworthy and somebody didn't tamper with the data. So, and that the correct person entered it. So there's a variety of things you can do there that so that um, like even in your pet, when you want to add new data to the pet, that it's maybe only the administrator that does it and not any person from the public. If the public could edit, that meant the data could maybe not be trustworthy. So that's our data integrity. Logging changes. Um, they also call this the audit trail, and that's basically just to keep track of who does what when to the data. Sometimes you'll get to the data and you'll see something important was lost or deleted or changed. Then you can go to the log to go see who made the changes. And then you can follow back as to why did they make the changes and where's the backups and if somebody stole the information or whatever happened to the information. That's normally like a sabotage if somebody wants to sabotage that. Data warehousing, we spoke about just storing a lot of data, all our historical data. Access control is very important. As I said, just making sure who gains access to the data. Maybe not just who gains access to changing the data, but also who can see the data. You would not want everybody in the company to see everybody else's salaries, for that matter. So only accounting people should have access to those data and all the rest. So you can see user rights to give each, depending on who the user is, if it's public or certain departments, that they can only access the information that's needed for them. Parallel data sets, that's used for backup. So as the word says parallel, so you've got two data sets that are identical. So if the one gets corrupted, you've got the other one to maybe use and to recover information that was lost. And that is the end for the first chapter. So that's where I'm going to stop for now. Our activity, the consolidation activity, which is on page 21 in your textbook, but I've also made a copy of this. If you can do these 7 questions for me for this exercise. Thank you very much, everybody. If you've got any other queries, please ask me on WhatsApp and then I'll reply as soon as I can. Thanks, people. Goodbye.